Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. It's hard to believe it's March already. Time is going so fast. We have been in 2 Kings. We're going to be in chapter 6, which we were in that last week as well, but we're wrapping up the tail end of chapter 6. We've been talking about being obedient and the importance of being obedient. Well, we've also been talking about how God has taken care of his people and how he protects his people. So picking up in verse 24 of 2 Kings 6, it says, "And it came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his host and went up and besieged Samaria." So what he did, boys and girls, is their cities were different than our cities are today. But imagine a city that has a wall built all the way around it, and you can only get in and out through certain gates. Well, boys and girls, what had happened was King Ben-Hadad, he had come and he had surrounded the city, and he had blocked those gates so nobody could get in, nobody could get out. Well, the problem is, boys and girls, that then they can't get any food. They can't get their crops. They can't harvest what they have, and the people began to become very, very hungry. Verse 25 says, "And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until a donkey's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver." Yeah, not your head, thankfully, Peter. "And the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver." Now, in my researching, basically think of a dove's dung like a handful of beans, okay? So a handful of beans and 5 pieces of silver, as it said, was over a month's wages. So working for more than a month, and you can only buy a handful of beans. And then when it talked about the donkey's head, it's basically saying something that didn't taste good and had very little meat on it, but was very expensive. So only the wealthy people at this time were able to afford food. Well, this is a problem, okay? These people are starving. And this lady sees the king of Israel going around on the top of the city wall, going about his business, and she shouts out to him. She shouts to the king in verse 26. "And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, 'Help, my lord, O king! Help us, Lord, we're hungry.'" She goes on to tell the king something that's going to sound really gross, boys and girls. Like, we cannot imagine that this would happen. There were 2 ladies, and they were so hungry, they were starving, that the one lady said to the second lady, "We will boil my son today, and then tomorrow we'll boil your son and eat him." Boys and girls, they were so hungry that they were willing to eat their children. So what the lady actually is telling the king, she's like, "So we did that. Day 1, we boiled my son. We ate my son. Day 2, the other lady hid her son. Now we can't eat him. We're hungry and we can't eat him." And she was so distraught. Boys and girls, they were so hungry, they weren't thinking straight. Okay, some of us get hangry when we get hungry, but they were beyond that. And they were having a hard time thinking and reasoning through things. Boys and girls, we have so much to be thankful for. Boys and girls, you've not reached that stage where you've been so hungry that you've been willing to eat another, maybe a little hungry, but not that hungry. Boys and girls, we're not to the point that we've been so hungry that we would do absolutely crazy things. But what are some things that we take for granted? Did you have breakfast this morning, boys and girls? You had clothes to put on. You probably woke up in a house this morning, and you probably had a bed and some covers and some blankets. Your house probably had heat. You're going to come to church a little bit later. You're probably not going to walk to church, most of you, unless you live really close. You're going to take a car. What are some things that you're taking for granted? What should you take time to thank the Lord for today? Too many T's in a row there, boys and girls. But make sure you take some time today to thank the Lord that you have food. Even if you don't like what mom and dad serve, be thankful that you have food. Well, the king, so she's talking back and forth with the king about what's taking place. And the king's like, what do you want me to do? I can't give you food. I don't have food to give you. I can't help you out. Well, the Lord gets very angry, and the king gets very angry. He gets angry with Elisha and with the Lord. He gets so angry that he actually commands that a servant go and take off Elisha's head. He says his head shall not be upon his body. He commands that Elisha be killed because the king is so upset over what's going on. Well, the Bible tells us that Elisha knows that this servant is coming to kill him. And he actually tells the people in his house, he says, don't open the door for him. Don't let him in, because actually the king's going to be right behind him, and he changed his mind. Looking at verse 32, but Elisha sat in his house, and the elders sat with him, and the king sent a man from before him. But ere the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, see ye how this son of a murderer hath sent to take away mine head. Look, when the messenger cometh, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? He says, hold him at the door. He's coming to murder me, but his master's right behind him. Verse 33, and while he yet talked with them, behold, the messenger came down unto him, and he said, behold, this evil is of the Lord. What should I wait for the Lord any longer? Boys and girls, the king acknowledges that he's really upset with God. It's not with Elisha, and he is coming. We're going to pick up in chapter 7 next week, and you're going to have to come back and find out what happens to the king when he talks to Elisha, and what happens to the people of Samaria. Will they starve to death? Will God provide? How will God provide? Better come